Okay, on that note, boom, we're live. Thank you, Mr. Eric Bowers, for joining.
First for me, this will be fun. Let's do it.
So, you were just in Montana at your property. How was that?
Yes, we were. So we did a quick blitz, just threw the kids in the truck and drove out to Montana. It's about a 9.5-hour drive, but with the dog and a cat and 2 kids, it ends up being about an 11-hour drive in Seattle traffic. But yeah, we went out there and hung out with both of our families. They both live there now in Kalispell, and we subsequently have 20 acres there and got out to, kind of see where we might want to build a home someday. And it's refreshing for us because being from a small town in Montana and growing up there for both Kate and I, going back there from a place like Seattle is a breath of fresh air in every sense of the word.
Definitely.
The wide open spaces, the mountains, and it brings back memories of being a kid and growing up in a place that I felt like was, it was very special. And I've always thought the Flathead Valley was pretty special. So it's even more special to us that we have a little piece of land out there to call our own. So it was great to get out there and see it and take the kids and have them be a part of it too.
Yeah. So 20 acres, that's a pretty good amount of space. Do you have like a couple spots you're thinking about building on, or is it like you have the one spot picked out?
Yeah. So we have a main home site kind of in the stand of timber that's on the back of the property. It's very flat. And there's a lot of hay. Like it was traditionally used as a hay field for the person who sold it to us. But there's a little stand of timber in the back that we'll build on the forever house. But then closer to the front of the property, we're thinking about building like a little, VRBO, like kind of cabin kind of deal. So supplemental income when we're retired, or if, when friends and family come, there's extra space there. And it's kind of a project to kind of put our own stamp on too. So nothing big by any stretch of the imagination, but something we're kind of excited about doing. So multiple projects, lots of ideas, lots of pie in the sky, cloud, up on the cloud stuff. But we got some ideas, and there's a lot of space to move around.
Nice. So would you build that smaller property like while you're building the main property just as like a temporary place, or would they be two totally separate projects?
They'd probably be two totally separate projects. The VRBO, it would kind of be dependent on, time availability, because, if you do that yourself, it's kind of time consuming. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is that building material right now is insanely expensive everywhere. Yeah. I mean, I went and looked at it today, and lumber futures are up like 400%, which is just ridiculous.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's just, it's bananas what's going on in the economy right now. But once we have the time and a little bit of, free equity, we'll probably get started on something. Kate definitely has ideas that are inspired by some of the other, the places we've been. Like, so she had an aunt that was in Vermont, lived in Vermont for a long time. And so she kind of looks at the, Instagram and has a lot of ideas that are coming from various sources there. So some interesting yet simple architecture, but a kind of a cool multi-use space that we'll put out there someday.
How many horses are you going to have, or is she going to have, I should say?
Well, my truck already has 500, so that's enough right there. She has one horse right now. We'll probably have another one, I would suspect, for the kids someday. So, like I say, 20 acres is a ton of space, and it's a lot of grass. Yeah. Once you see it, you're going, holy smokes, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Even with a riding mower, it would take you, 2 days to just mow it. So if something's out there eating the grass, then that helps you out a little bit. But I'd say probably 2 is the magic number.
Nice. So I saw you shared an article about that ranch that had a river runs through it, was just sold, and the something arrow. Like I was curious about, like, I read the article and it looked like you had some opinions about that, and I was curious, like, and you kind of tied it into the Yellowstone Club. I'm not even aware of what that is. I was curious what that all was about.
So the Yellowstone Club is it's adjacent to Big Sky, the ski resort south of Bozeman there.
Mm-hmm.
A very affluent place. Always has been a place where, you know, people are very well off go and they have second homes, some of which I've been in over the years. And the Yellowstone Club is just the pinnacle of that. I worked in college landscaping, and the Yellowstone Club has houses in there that are, you know, 4, 5, even 20,000 square feet at times.
Holy cow.
And I mean, just the level of development there is just, it's unworldly. And the sad thing to me is that, and this is the same thing with that ranch we're talking about in that article, it is beautiful country. It is something that I feel like everyone who is from Montana should see at least once, because the expanses, the mountainscapes, the sunrises and sunsets, man, I mean, it's just a once in a lifetime experience just to see it even once. And now this ranch we're talking about in this article that I posted, it's north of Bozeman, and it's enormous. I think it's 80,000 acres or something like that. It's adjacent to Ted Turner's land, which is also rather expansive. And it's been owned by the same family for 3, maybe 4 generations now. And they may have even homesteaded on it. I don't know the history of it, but I always knew it as the CA Ranch. I think it has a different, you know, a formal name. I didn't even know what it was, but I saw the picture of it and I knew immediately that it was the CA Ranch. So I grew up going hunting there with my dad. He did a bunch of work for the owners, the Anderson family, and they always kind of, you know, in return for his services, kind of let us go up there and go cow hunting.
Okay. I was wondering about that a little bit, because you talked about going out on the property, and I was like, well, I was wondering if like part of the sale was also like taking some land that had previously been public land, but it's not. So you were able to just go out and kind of adventure out there.
Yeah, exactly. It's all been private land for as long as I can remember, as long as I've known about the place. But they literally have entire herds of elk up there where the bulls are all 6-7 point trophy bulls. And that's how they make a lot of their money, is they have people that come in and pay for guided hunting trips back there in this backcountry. I mean, it's so remote and so expansive. It's just, I mean, there's nothing out there but you and whatever animals are around you at that time. I mean, it is a truly remote part of the state. It's kind of tucked back away from everything. And I valued it even as a 10-year-old kid going there with my dad for probably the first or second time. And, you know, it was probably 20 below zero, and we're putting chains on the truck trying to drive around in the snow up there. And I just remember, it was insane. The places we would go on top of this mountain. But I remember sitting there with this, you know, minus 40 wind chill biting me in the face, but watching the sun come up over Hatfield Mountain, which is on the eastern part of the ranch there, and just thinking, man, this is cool. Like, it's just, I'm the only one who can see this right now. And now to think that the legacy of that ranch is being sacrificed for financial gain. And I can't fault the family right now, because $136 million is a king's ransom times 100.
Yeah.
But the legacy of this place is now being subjected to forces that would rather change it than keep it the same. And that's kind of what Bozeman at large has been in the last 20 years, which is where I grew up. And both you and I went to school there. So
yeah,
it's the same kind of change. It's gentrification. It's an asymmetric change where a lot of people are being pushed out, because these people that own this ranch have been doing very hard work for, like I say, 3, maybe 4 generations. And now that legacy is being pushed off for something that is, you know, in my opinion, a little bit superficial. Developing the land for these huge McMansions, you know, the Silicon Valley executives. It's sickening to me, because it really is a special place. And I would hope that, you know, the legacy of that would be preserved, but I feel like that's just not what's going to happen. And so that's kind of why I felt like I needed to say something publicly about how yeah,
it was an interesting article. And I mean, like, because I actually read it on Kate's page first, And then I saw your post. And
Yeah.
like when I read it, I was just like, when I read that, all I thought was, oh, somebody wants to pay a lot of money for what used to be a really popular movie. So it's,
Yeah,
you know,
I mean
it's interesting to hear this
that's
other
how it got its
perspective.
fame, yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's if you see the movie, you get a feel for what the place is like. I mean, that, you know, he's fishing on the river, and you get a sense of being connected to the land a little bit in that, you know, Hollywood type of way. But I've been on that ranch in places where you know, it's a different perspective, even just like being there and being in the moment, man. In fact, there's one spot there called the Eagle's Nest, and it is a tunnel that goes through the side of the mountain, and it pops out on this this railroad bridge that's suspended over this river, over the river that's in the movie, probably by about, I don't know, several hundred feet, if not 500 or more. And you look down and you're like, wow, that's crazy. And then to think about, you know, the railroads actually using that railroad grade when they went from Bozeman to Ringling way back in the day. I mean, this is a long time ago. They haven't used that in quite a while, but you see those kinds of places, and I think that's actually been in a car commercial too. So it's pretty well known at this point. I mean, the movie, and then the commercials, and then some of the other uses I'm sure that none of us know about. But I mean, if the Wall Street Journal is reporting about it, then you know it's a big deal. And 136 million, that's going to catch someone's attention for sure. But I'm sure when they chop it up and they, you know, make these bigger lots, that they're going to make all their money back. So,
well, I'm sure. So is that, like, I didn't see anything in that article talking about what they were going to do. I mean, you look at that land and you think, you know, you could definitely parcel this out into a lot of different pieces. That being said, there was, like, it sounded like it was a lot more than just that main house. It sounded like it came with like a whole staff and horses and like, or cattle. It was cattle. It came with a bunch of cattle.
Yeah,
and all that. So is there like a main area on there that's like more developed, and then there's just a whole bunch of like backcountry basically?
Yeah, so you drive in into this valley pretty much, and you get past the town of Modlo, which is an old settlement, which I think was on the railroad too. Once you get past Modlo and you continue north, you go down into this valley, and you can see the barn, the ranch house, the main house. There's probably, I don't know, half a dozen or more structures down the valley. But then you go up where we went hunting all the time when I was a kid, up into the west side of the property. And there's even like little cabins and stuff up there too. So
wow.
It is really cool up in there. They call it the Botham. They have special names for all these different places, but there's a lot to it, and it's not just trees and mountains and stuff. There's all kinds of intricacies to it that makes it, you know, a pretty unique property.
Interesting. So when you went back to your property, did you just spend your time, like, did you go back to Bozeman at all, or I'm assuming you were just up at your place and with your parents maybe?
Yeah. So usually we would split up the trip. We would make it about a week and do half of it in Kalispell, half of it in Bozeman. Because up until recently, my folks lived in Bozeman, where I grew up and went to high school.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, but they just sold their house and moved to Kalispell too. So now both sides of our families are in Kalispell. So the grandkids have, you know, one town to go to, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can kind of, and when we move there, it'll be, you know, we got to divvy up the time between the two families equitably and, you know, make it meaningful, obviously. But it'll just make it that much easier to, you know, do family functions and dinners and holidays and stuff. You don't have to get in the car and drive somewhere. Everyone is in the same place, which I never even thought we would do that. But then my parents all of a sudden said, we're moving to Kalispell. And I was like, okay, cool. Let's do that.
Was their decision to move to Kalispell influenced by the fact you had some land there already?
Yeah, I think so. That definitely played a part of it. But my mom's dad, grandpa, he loved Glacier Park. That was his playground.
Yeah, and with good reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's man, it's probably one of my favorite places in the entire world I've ever been. And to have that right out your back door is amazing. But Grandpa always wanted to live in a flathead, apparently, and so he never realized that dream. But I think maybe that influenced my mom too. We tend to be, on my mom's side of the family, we're very sentimental about things, and I think that played a huge part in, you know, the impetus to move up there. So now they're there, and I think they're going to take full advantage of it. They're pretty excited to be there, and we're excited to have them there too.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful area. You know, that's where those Spartans are in the general vicinity, anyways. But it's a beautiful area. I remember taking some trips up there in the summer as a kid. My grandparents used to live up. It wasn't in Kalispell. They always kind of lived outside of town. And it's like I don't know if you know the place Many Lakes. There's a little development.
Yeah, that's just south of where our property is. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's a great little spot. So, yeah, it's a really nice area. So, kind of switching subjects here. One of the big things, like, Joanna's mom came out for Mother's Day over here, and one of the big things that she noticed was the big difference in how, like, masks and all that were handled for this whole COVID thing. So, like, you've gone back and forth a few times. Like, what's that been like? Because I know because Montana right now, they don't even have a mandate for masks right now, right? They already got rid of it.
Correct. Governor Gianforte repealed the mask mandate about a month ago, I think. But having seen, you know, I've gone through the airport a few times here in Seattle, and that's kind of, you know, that's a look into how, you know, mandated mask wearing is done, and it's all by the book. Like, everyone's wearing it, no questions asked. Then you go out in public places here, and you see largely the same thing. Everyone is quote unquote in compliance. But then you start getting into, like, when you go east on I-90, you get into, you know, eastern Washington, Idaho, and then Montana, and you kind of see this evolution where it's a little bit of both, and then you get to Montana, and it's almost like nobody is.
Yeah.
And it, you know, I kind of attribute that to the phenomenon that, you know, we're Americans, and you know, damn it, we're going to land on the moon. And also, I don't have to wear a mask. You know, it comes from this same place of, I'm independent, and I'm going to do it because that's what I want to do. And I feel like the mask thing has kind of forced a dichotomy that is very reflective of the current flavor of politics.
Oh yeah.
You know, there's no middle ground. Yeah, there's no middle ground. No one wants to make a compromise. No one wants to talk about it. No one wants to look at the data, look at the studies, compare studies. It's wear it, or, you know, or else, or don't. Or
it's kind of turning into the, it's either science versus freedom. It's like, that's not really helpful.
Yeah, it's not. And, you know, those things are not mutually exclusive. You can talk about the science, but also talk about, like, hey, if I'm outside and, you know, I'm in a public place, but I'm still, you know, 6 feet away, or even 3 feet away from somebody, is that okay? And, you know, sometimes the science gets into the point where people are saying, well, the science doesn't say anything about that specifically. And then my response to that is, well, why not? Because this pandemic, we've seen so many times where we start talking about the science, you know, this is what the science says about the masks. I'm like, what does the science say about transmissibility of the virus? Do we hear anything about that last year? I felt like it was very little. It was social distancing, wear a mask. Social distancing, wear a mask. That's all you heard about. And then vaccines kind of came along too. It's like that movie Being John Malkovich, like that one part where he's having a nightmare where everyone's walking around going,
I haven't seen it. Sorry.
Malkovich. Yeah. Well, anyway, I feel like that could have been the narrative, like social distancing, wear a mask, social distancing, wear a mask. And it's so much more nuanced than that.
Yeah, I think it's really tricky because, I mean, especially like when, like what I don't like is when it gets to the point where like and I got this impression talking to Joanna's mom, was that basically it was like, you're wearing a mask, oh, you must be a liberal. You're not wearing a mask, oh, you must be a conservative. And it was just like,
Yeah,
how did that makes absolutely no sense.
that's it, again, that you're right. It's just that dichotomy of, well, you're doing this, so that means this. And
Yeah.
it's an oversimplification. Like it's this subjective, you know, some people call it like virtue signaling or something like that.
Mhm.
It's garbage. It's just, you know, people are capable of free and independent thought, and that includes, you know, who they vote for.
Mhm.
It includes who they don't vote for as well. So again, this dichotomy is just it's forcing us further and further and further apart. And I always come back to the idea in looking at masks and vaccines and then watching the news about the pandemic. I always kind of come back to the idea that for a country that is so diverse in experience, socioeconomics, race, ethnicity, religion, why in the world is it that we have a two-party system? Why is that allowed? Why has that been allowed to be pervasive throughout history? And I mean, I know the answer to that is power and money.
Red versus
But
blue, man. It's
yeah,
real easy. And yeah, I totally get what you're saying. I agree.
it just needs, you know, it needs to be reinvigorated. And I would cite so many other places that I've been, in particular Germany. I think they have something like 73 different political parties that are, you know, they
Yikes.
have specific. Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, you can have two or 73. I don't know. One could be better than the other, and then maybe not so much. But you know, you need to have options. And again, I think that's an American, a very American thing too, is having choices. We don't
Yeah,
have just one.
I've really wanted to see more of a rise, and it's kind of started a bit of like a libertarian party, like a real actual party that actually, you know, it doesn't just come up with a third party candidate who steals the votes from the losing party, because that's all that it is right
Yeah.
now. But you know, something like that, because I always think it's amazing, you know, you get two people arguing, but then you put one more person into that, you know, regardless of if it's, you know, if it's the Green Party, if it's the Libertarians, whatever. As long as they're making reasonable statements, the whole
Yeah.
conversation changes, and the amount of nuance that has to be brought into the conversation, you know, it goes way up, which the amount of lack of nuance right now in politics and this whole mask thing is stunning. I mean, it's really frustrating, because I mean, like personally, I think that masks help. I don't think that they I don't think that they 100% protect, but I think that they help. It's not that they're 100% effective. It's not that they're 0% effective. Should you wear them? Yeah, it's probably a good idea. Is it going to absolutely save you? No, but it's something that, you know, it's a preventative measure that, you know, it's one more thing that you can do, that when you have a global pandemic, it is good to do. It is helpful. Whether or not it should be mandated, that's another question. But
Yeah, and I think again, you know, if something is mandated, it comes back to that idea I was talking about. Like, I'm going to do this because that's what I want to do, and I have the freedom of choice to do so. Um, it, you need to protect liberty, but you also need to protect the common good. And I feel like that idea is something that we have struggled with mightily as a society in this country for a while now. That, you know, social media has made information readily available that is probably not good information, is
oh yeah,
not conducive to productive conversations, and mirrors more rhetorical, or not rhetorical, rhetoric, just, you know, things that are not they're not being said to be positive or move things in a positive direction.
yeah.
So
I mean, and it's hard when you give everybody a microphone, and you know, a lot of it's pretty easy to latch on to the negative comments. I mean, like,
Yes.
And then those get focused on, and that's not, you end up with a very, very negative system. Have you seen not The Social Network, that Netflix special where they were talking about how social media is basically like inflaming everything and it's
I'm not sure I've seen that yet.
I'll have to, social something. I'll look it up here, what the name of it is. It's a really good social. It's a really good documentary about social. Come on, here we go. I'm stumbling through my words here real bad because I'm having to type and talk at the same time. Social Dilemma. That's the one. If you haven't, have you seen that?
Okay. I haven't seen it, but it's popped up on my, you should watch this. So maybe I should watch it.
You should. It was stunning. And they do put a bit of drama in there. I think that they didn't need to do that. They tried to, put some acting in there, but then they have like all the people from, well, not all the people, a lot of interviews they have are from like the person who invented the Facebook like button, and how they tried to basically keep you hooked. And it's like, all right, if he responded to this well last time, so let's give him a little bit more of that, but not too much. So he's more interested. He doesn't leave. And then, this is about the time he would usually leave, hit him with something that he really will latch on to, so we can keep him on for another 5 seconds. And like, but it just like it, the way that it polarizes things is really kind of scary.
Now that you're describing it, I think I have seen this. Some of the acting scenes, like they portray like 3 guys like they're kind of the engine that has the logic in it that keeps the user hooked, like to go.
That's the one.
Yeah. And I'm watching it and I'm going, yeah, this is bad.
It's like you like, and then like after you watch that, you're sitting there like, I'm scrolling through the Facebook feed and I'm like, I can see it happening, and I feel myself, and it's like even like there's some things where it's like, once you realize it, like once you knowing is half the battle. It's like once you know something, it's like you kind of see it, and then you're able to be able to cut yourself off a little bit more. But there are plenty of times with that where it's just like, I know exactly what's going on here, and I'm having a really hard time wanting to put this phone down because I know that there's about to be another video here that pops up that, I love those cat videos or skateboarding videos or whatever it is,
Or holy crap, I do need a set of 6 belts right now. That may or may not have worked on me, but you're right. And that is such an interesting phenomenon, because the people that created the coding for Facebook in particular, and probably Instagram, I would think as well, they have harnessed the human psychology in such a way that, like you say, that it's happening. That it's probably not good, but it just continues. And I deleted the app off my phone, but I still use it just in my browser occasionally.
I did the same thing.
I disabled the alerts and stuff. At least Facebook's not going to steal my data. Okay, so at least not as much of it. But the phenomenon is interesting, because it's something that I think almost every person that owns a personal, cell phone, tablet, whatever, what have you, they all experience that. Some of them are aware of it, some are not. And I think, you, like you say, if you're aware of it, but that it's not good, it's the next level to actually like make some positive change out of that. To put it down requires a lot of introspection. And that is something that in and of itself, introspection part of it is something that we as a country are not very good about. We cannot see past ourselves at all. And if you were able to do that when you're sitting there scrolling, and you would think about how someone else might see that for a second, like, what would great grandma think of me sitting here on my phone all day? She probably.
Oh man, I've even thought, just like, like if my dad had a phone, what would my dad be doing with the phone? Like or what if you just handed this phone to my dad, like at this point in my life, like when I was 9 years old and my dad had a phone, what would he be doing with it? And it's like he'd probably still be out chopping wood, getting ready for the winter, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, it's that, you know, it's slowly found its way into our lives, as opposed to if you just hand it to someone that, you know, to be like, okay, yeah, this is
Yeah, it has found its way into all the nooks and crannies and crevices of our lives, and it's a way we exchange information. It's a way that we become aware of certain things, which is really terrible. I mean, social media is not a good place to find news, but
yeah.
you know, it's just so pervasive, and there's no going back. And I feel like people just, you know, on an individual level need to make some change for themselves to make it a positive thing again. And that's going to take a lot.
Yeah, Facebook started to annoy me a lot a few years back. I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. And so, because, you know, there was there wasn't anything in particular going on politically at the time that I remember, but it was just like that. There was some, like, it was like, I am getting so much politics in my feed. And it's like, I don't want politics in my feed. I want pictures of my friends and memes. That's all I want. Or maybe some sports, you know? And so I
totally agree with you. Yeah.
I went through and I literally like like I kept everyone as friends, but I unfollowed basically everyone, and then went back and was like, okay, I you know, I follow this person, you know, family, close friends, people that are like, you know, next door neighbors or what this, and that helped a lot. That helped a lot to be able to really cut back on that and not getting some of those
making conscious choices of who, you know, what you want to see makes the platform usable for you, instead of you being usable for the platform, which is exactly what the social dilemma is talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, I think that the thing that we, on a lighthearted note, the thing that we do not do enough of is laugh. And so I would go through and I would see, you know, Aussie Man reviews, which I think is absolutely hysterical.
That's hilarious, because I almost mentioned him when I was talking about scrolling through my YouTube feed. I love that guy. He's hilarious.
Yeah. There's one video of two corgis fighting, and we had two corgis up until recently. And so that one resonated. I probably watched it 3 times and thought it was hysterical. So, you know, finding things like that make social media more digestible, a way to, like, you know, get some endorphins going. That would go a long way, even just if people did it once or twice a day.
Well, and I mean, and like the whole like social media thing is set up where, you know, if all you search for is, you know, information about vaccines, you'll pretty quickly get routed to like anti-vax, or, you know, it polarizes pretty quick. But if all you search for is corgi videos, that's all that's going to show up in your feed too. So, I mean, it's not like the system is inherently like trying to polarize people. It's just the way that it's set up, that as soon as you touch one of those issues that has those extremes, it kind of, as soon as you tip your toe into one side or the other, it just like races you down this path. And then all of a sudden you're, you know, I don't know, you got your tinfoil hat on. So
yeah, I mean, 1 minute you're cruising down the, you know, the information superhighway, and then you take an off ramp, and usually an off ramp is like, okay, it's surface street, something. No, you go down a rabbit hole immediately. And you know, the code and the logic is hilarious, because like you say, you just get saturated, and next thing you know, you look down, you're like, oh, it's, you know, it's 11:30 at night. I should probably go to sleep.
Yeah, that's depressing. But it's interesting how quickly it works too, because like I've messed around with it. Like on Facebook, I'll search for like one particular thing like repeatedly, and it'll show up, but only for like maybe a day, and then it'll go right back to like my normal or like something else that I search. So like it moves quick. It's not like, I don't know, it was moving a lot faster than I was expecting. I was expecting to like search for, you know, corgi videos for a whole day, and then I'd have like 2 or 3 days of corgi videos. I was like, no. As soon as it would hit the next day, it was like all that's gone. It was like
you got to keep. They're going to keep you moving through the department store. Like you see one thing over here, and you see another thing over here, and they can't be the same. They got to keep you interested. That's how they hook you. Yeah,
it's pretty crazy. But something that's going to throw a lot of gasoline on all of this fire is this information that just came out from the CDC today about masks. Because I mean, it's like, oh my, like I was thinking about this a bit before we sat down to have this chat, and like there is so many issues with saying, travel restrictions aside, because those are staying the same, but basically for everything else, if you've been vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. Like, so you're just going to be putting your medical history out in public by whether or not you're wearing a mask. Like, so if everyone is strictly adhering to that, that's what you're basically doing. So basically you have a mask on, you have not been vaccinated. So, it's not like your full medical history, but it's, it's a piece of personal information that doesn't necessarily need to be made public, is now basically being, because nobody wants to wear a mask. So,
and I think that's kind of why, nobody wants to wear the mask. And if you're like, I'm not wearing a mask, I got vaccinated. Some people might actually be, pretty proud of that. I think it's also, it's also something that CDC is doing to incentivize people to get vaccinated.
Yes, that was my first thought.
You can go back to normal if you go get the jab in the arm twice.
Yeah, and I'm sure it'll work on plenty of people. I think the vaccine is a good thing overall. I've had one shot, even though I had COVID, which I think I got my first shot too close to COVID, because that first shot had me feeling side effects for a couple of days. It was dumb. I'm not looking forward to the second shot. I got Pfizer, so I'm hoping that it'll be less exciting. But I don't know. There's just so many questions about this. Like, so what about the people who had COVID and don't need the vaccine? So do they have to wear a mask?
Yes, that's a valid question. And again, I said it earlier, I think I did anyway. Where is the science? Where is the data? Where are the studies on that? What are the specifics? I don't want to hear it from the same people. I know that Anthony Fauci has kind of been the figurehead for this. I don't want to hear it
he's been all over the place. So like here's a perfect example. So he's saying now, right? I don't know. Did Fauci say it? Is he CDC? I forget who. So is he coming out
of the NIH?
Okay.
The CDC is the agency that just came out today and said, if you're vaccinated, you don't need a mask. That's the CDC, and Dr. Walensky, I think, is the head of the CDC, whereas Dr. Fauci is the head of the NIH. They share information poorly, in my opinion, but they share information, and the messaging has kind of been consistent. Again, poorly consistent, but they say the same kinds of things. But with what the CDC is doing, they're incentivizing vaccination, trying to encourage things to go back to normal. But I'm going, have you really looked at all of the data points to, make sure that's safe or a good idea? Because, last year it was stay home, flatten the curve. Mm-hmm. And then it became, okay, we got to get the numbers to this. And then, okay, now we got to get the numbers to this, and we got to flatten the curve again. Like we always talked about the statistics and how that influenced everything. And we're talking about herd immunity, like 70% vaccination rate is kind of what they were saying for herd immunity. So if they're going to ditch the mask and you're looking at the data, have you reached a point in this country where there is enough people vaccinated to make herd immunity almost possible, where you can ditch the masks? And I would say no. That has not happened yet. And yet here we have the CDC kind of turning this thing on its head, going against their previous philosophies. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. You're kind of doing a 180, almost a 180.
Yeah. So,
and I see the logic, but the logic doesn't make sense to me. It's not.
Well, it's not fully
based.
formed. It's because if you're saying you need to have 70%, I know that a lot of people have been vaccinated, but 70%, I don't think we're there yet. I mean, I don't know where we're at. I haven't been watching the numbers, but I'm pretty sure we're not. But the piece that really got me going on this was like, so we're supposed to be wearing masks to protect other people, right? That was like, you don't wear the mask for yourself because it really doesn't help you, but it does help other people. If you happen to have COVID, you spread it less. It's like, okay, it's a great way to make people wear masks because now it's this selfless thing that you're doing. Well, with this new guidance from the CDC, who are they saying still needs to wear the masks? The unvaccinated people, because they are still in danger. So it's like, wait a second, I thought you wore masks for other people, but now you're wearing masks for yourself. It's like, this does not follow.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
You're absolutely right. What people, if we just did this tomorrow, that's the way things were in public. I mean, you're literally turning the entire logic on its tail.
Yeah.
What people see out in public would be not what they're used to and not what they're hearing via, official channel messaging. And you're like, oh, well, that guy's, he's wearing a mask. He hasn't gotten his shot yet. So you instead of being a mask shamer, it's vaccination shaming.
Yes.
It's it's just, it's going to happen. It's probably already happening somewhere. And it's too bad that it has to be that way, because we should be able to get through a pandemic, kind of with some unification. But yeah, the official messaging has been inconsistent, has generated this dichotomy, and it's not.
I mean, to be fair, it's a brand new virus that we don't understand. So the guidance is going to change, but like doing like such complete 180s and being like, no, you don't need to wear a mask. You don't need to wear a mask. Wait, you need to wear 2 masks. You wear a mask for yourself. No, you wear a mask for other. It's like, okay, I understand that you're working your way through this, and every little piece of information does change things around. And I mean, you do want to make things simple. You don't want to make it too complicated for people, but still it has been all over the place. And it's really frustrating.
Yeah, it is frustrating. And I think the reason it's frustrating is because we, the American people, who are, again, very independent, culturally speaking, we need to know why. And we never knew that.
Yeah.
Why are we wearing a mask? Well, wear a mask. That was kind of how it started out. And, there were some studies and some data that trickled out. And you go down certain paths watching the pandemic unfold. Well, why was remdesivir approved to be a therapeutic for COVID? Well, they had good data. Well, then why did the WHO come out and say that it doesn't work? It has high toxicity.
Because it's not from China.
It's a garbage drug. Yeah. So, I'll say that about the NIH, the CDC, and the FDA. They were really good about getting the vaccines out. The vaccine technology was absolutely amazing. As far as therapeutics and treatments go, they failed. F- big time. If you follow the number of deaths and what was available, they basically gave people steroids, which are an immunosuppressant. So you're suppressing someone's immune system when they have a virus that we know nothing about inside them, when they should have been getting other drugs that restore the body's ability to fight infection, monoclonal antibodies. Regeneron had one. I think theirs kind of specifically targeted the original COVID strain. There's other small companies out there. Cytidine, who's actually a company that is in Washington State, they have a monoclonal antibody that masks a CCR5 receptor, which allows your body to fight the cytokine storm. It basically calms the immune system down and it reduces the viral load. There's another company, I think they're in Europe somewhere. NeuroRx of Viptidil is theirs. I mean, I did a lot of reading. I got bored one day.
I can
and
tell.
I started reading this stuff. Yeah. And it's fascinating to watch, you know, in Dr. Fauci's own words, he said, I am laser focused on a vaccine. Well, you should have been laser focused on saving people's lives. And I know that's armchair quarterbacking from, you know, me. I know nothing about medicine, but I know that, you know, you need to help people any way you can. Like that's part of the Hippocratic Oath, and he's a doctor. So to me, that's a huge foul. And that, you know, all of that messaging, like we're laser focused on the vaccine, you know, wear a mask, social distance, it's all consistent, but it's consistently incomplete. It's not a comprehensive approach to a problem that is multifaceted. I'm using a lot of, you know, big military type jargon expressions here, but that's truly how I feel about it. It's a pandemic. You don't just go, well, we're going to do this and this is going to make it better. Well, yeah, it did, but you know, you built up this part of the castle, but this other part over here that was getting attacked burned down at the same time.
It's like they built their castle on a swamp that fell down. So we built our castle on another swamp, the same swamp. That one burned over.
Yeah. Somebody was terrible at World of Warcraft, apparently.
Oh man. So like I was thinking about like how they could have done this better. And if the CDC had come out and so they came out and said, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask, but everybody else does. I think what they should have said is nobody needs to wear a mask, but we highly recommend that if you have not been vaccinated, you wear a mask, because then it's optional, it's not shaming people, and it doesn't like pave the road for, you know, this like vaccine pass, green card, whatever BS system that people are cooking up all over the place so that you know you can get into Disney World or wherever. It's, I don't know, like
it's a
just that one, adding that one little piece of choice and basically saying, you know, we think that masks are not going to do as much good as they are doing harm right now. So we're just going to get rid of them. But instead of just targeting the vaccinated people, make it for everyone and say, hey, you know, if at this point we have enough vaccine supply out there that if you want a vaccine, you can be getting the vaccine. So it's really coming down to a choice. And making it this way, it really is. It's, you know, your point of, you know, anti-vax shaming, or well, and see, that's what I instantly jump to, and I hate that. It's like, you know, not vaccinated shaming, as opposed to letting people make the choice of, I have not received the vaccine. I might be at a slightly higher risk, so I'll wear a mask to help mitigate that risk, and that's my choice.
Yes.
But going about it this other way, because I mean, like I don't know, like we all had shot, or I had my first shot, but like I also had COVID. And so there's a part of me that's like, I don't really know if I need this shot. Like I'll get it because I think that it's good overall. And that's what I've heard. I didn't do a lot of research into it, but like, I wasn't like clamoring to get it either. I mean, I waited until Boeing had it on site and I could literally walk 5 minutes down to a building, get the poke, and then that was it. I didn't want to go wait in lines. I didn't want to go all do this stuff.
And that story is very common. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people do the same thing. They wait for it to be available in their workplaces somewhere, or somewhere that's down the street. It's a matter of logistics, because you know we all went back to work a while ago, for the most part, and so the choice that one person makes is based on convenience, or it's based on daily life. It's based on work schedules. It's based on what the kids are doing at home. It's a choice. And, you know, the independence that we all like and enjoy culturally here, and the choice, you put those two things together, that's when people start responding positively. And I feel like your comment about the mask, you know, what the CDC could have done, said, hey, we recommend this. That then makes it a choice. And now someone can go, okay, yeah, I'll do that. I mean, you're going to have, you know, backwoods, you know, like 2DOT Montana that's going to go, no, we're not wearing a mask. We don't need
They
to
never
do that.
were. They never were.
They never were. Yeah, they never were. But, you know, and I've never been to 2DOT. I'm sure there's lovely people there. I don't know if you have anyone in the audience that would listen to this from 2DOT.
From 2DOT,
I'll go
man.
to 2DOT.
I'm so offended.
Yeah, but you know, make it a choice. Give people some latitude to explore their own opinions on things and educate themselves. That's a very American ideal too, and that's, you know, it's, at least in Washington, I feel like it's been very patronizing. Listening to some of the leadership go, well, you know, we're going to have to go back to phase 2 because, you know, there's just too many cases.
Yeah,
like,
I hate that. It's like they're taking your freedom and they're like dangling it out there like as a carrot of like, if you're good, you can have your freedom back. And it's like, dude, nobody is going out and actively like licking doorknobs trying to get COVID. We're not trying to, you know, I don't know about
increase the number of cases. So this doorknob's brass. It probably tastes pretty good, right?
Yeah,
but yeah, it's frustrating listening. Again, it's frustrating because the narratives you hear, like, well, this is a problem because people just aren't doing their part. Well, yeah, people are doing their part. And your comment about taking risk is something I feel like the civilian sector would benefit taking a master class from the military on. Like, we take risks all the time. Yeah. Every time we go fly, we fill out an ORM, operational risk management. You know, it's a matrix. It scores it for you, which is kind of artificial in some ways, but sure, you know, you at least have something to go off of. Like, I am willing to take this amount of risk. If it's more than this amount of risk, then what's the benefit? You know, there's a cost benefit analysis. Mm-hmm. And, you know, listening to the state's press releases on, you know, well, today is a yellow day because we have this many kids. It's kind of like going back to Homeland Security when Tom Daschle was like, today's a red day, orange, blue, now it's green. You know, it's almost arbitrary, and it's very frustrating because I feel like you got to make progress in other ways that are not analytics based, and that kind of gets left out. But again, risk management is something that is very nuanced, and I feel like,
well, and it's something, risk management is something that people, I mean, you don't realize how much risk you're taking every day. Like, the amount of risk that you have from COVID is pretty small. The risk you have of getting in your car and driving down I-5, that's a real risk.
You are milliseconds from disaster.
Or sitting in traffic for 2 hours, but but it's like there's so much of life that no matter what you're doing, there is inherently some risk in it. And it's like right now everyone is so incredibly focused on COVID, which, you know, there are certain how do I say this, like, certain people within the society, you know, older people with those underlying conditions, that, you know, COVID is very real. There's a very real threat to them. But I mean, so's the flu. I mean, we weren't freaking out about the flu. Now, granted, COVID has some really weird transmission rates, and, you know, it spreads a lot faster, and it is different. But like, there's so many pieces of our lives. Yeah, there's so many pieces of our lives. I mean, taking a drink of water goes down the wrong pipe, cough, cough, you bend down, hit your head, then you're dead. And it's like, I mean, just taking a drink of water, I mean, there's pretty much risk to everything you do, but it's like, we took this one risk, this COVID risk, and at the beginning, when it was an unknown, okay, I get that. It's an unknown. It looks like it's killing 10% of the population regardless. It's like, okay, that's serious. But once the larger numbers come in, that percent drops dramatically. It's like everyone's still treating it like it's that 10% risk, but it's really much lower. And it's like, there's so many other aspects of your life where if you put the same like kind of analytics, you would just be like hiding under your bed in bubble wrap the whole day because you don't know if like a solar wind is going to come blowing through and well, I guess the solar breeze doesn't do much to us. Our electronics are another story, but you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's people react to it because they're afraid of it, and their reaction is in many ways logical, because what I mean, if you don't know anything about it and you're afraid of it, like any number of things can happen.
Yeah.
What is the second and third order effects of that? We saw in the economy. We saw major thoroughfares basically shut down. The economy was in shambles and still kind of is in some ways. It's getting better.
Yeah.
But everything out of fear for something you don't know anything about. And that's where, again, where was that effort from leadership at any organization, government, non-government, or otherwise, that was saying, here's what we know, here's what we don't know, here's how we're working to understand it.
Yeah. I mean, how often as a kid have you heard it's okay to say what you don't know, but then when it comes to something really important like this, Fauci will not, it's like saying what you don't know would have really helped, and be like, listen, we just don't know. And so this is why we're doing this. When we figure it out, we'll probably change course. If he just said something like that.
Yes, you're spot on. My single biggest problem with everyone who has come out being an expert on, virology and epidemiology and COVID in particular, if you came out and said something like that, like, we don't know that is interpreted as a sign of weakness. It is not. That means that you are acknowledging reality. You're being honest. You are telling people, yeah, you are. You're being, you're a public servant and you're telling them what they need to hear, which is, we don't know, but we're working on it. And so, it's consistent across political parties over time. Even people, like the CDC and the NIH and the WHO, they won't come out and say, we don't know. And that annoys me to no end, because some of the people that I've worked by and for, the people who would not come out and say, well, I don't know, and when it was apparent they didn't, I immediately lost respect for them, because I didn't know either. I had no idea what the problem was completely, or a solution, and yet I knew that they didn't know either. It was very obvious. So when you have the same negative messaging, like, it's really bad, yeah, it's getting worse, oh, it's terrible, okay, why? We don't know. What do we do to make it better? Well, we don't know. All they could have said that, put it in a box and put a ribbon on it, obviously, to make it a little more palatable. But it never happened, and because people in the higher levels of government here in our leadership here in the United States definitely think that saying I don't know is a sign of weakness, and it's not. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah, it's something I run into a lot at Boeing, where, like, you get a problem with how the aircraft's getting put together. There's some holes that are coming out funky, and you'll get, 3 people who will come up shouting, you need to go do this. You need to change that. You need to go talk to design engineering and have them change this. And it's like, okay, well, what does the data say? Oh, data says it's not a problem. Oh, well, are you sure the data says that? No. Okay, well, let's go take a look. Let's talk about what we don't know. And it's pretty incredible how quickly can stuff fly around there. So I see that a lot, and I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. So, but like, and then another piece of this whole, like, if you haven't been vaccinated, you have to keep wearing a mask. What about kids? And then what about kids age? I forget what it is exactly, who can take Pfizer now. I think it's like 15 to I forget the ages.
I think 12. I heard 12 to 15 was the last cohort that they had data on, and now they're doing trials for, like, kids down to, like, 6 months. I know I heard it on the radio the other day, but they're exploring they're kind of narrowly banding these cohorts together, so they have very concentrated, specific data, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You would want that. So, but I think 12 is the youngest age that is authorized to get it right now.
Right. But then, so, like, So does that mean that 12 to 15-year-olds who this vaccine became available to them like 2 weeks ago, now if they're not vaccinated, they have to wear a mask? But kids below, like, and then what do you do for like up to 11 years old? Do they have to wear a mask? They don't even have the option for a vaccine yet, unless they're doing some clinical trial. I mean, but the whole thing is just like this, the way this thing came out. I mean, it's just like on the surface, it's like, yes, no more masks. But then like you start to kind of like dig into it a little, and it's like, this is an opportunity for all the Karens of the world to just erupt. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, you don't have a mask on? You don't have a mask on? Well, are you vaccinated? Yes. Well, can you show me? I don't feel I should have to do that. Well, you were saying you're vaccinated. I need to see. It's like, oh my goodness, there
are so many layers to that onion. It's crazy just to think about, the individual interactions that people might have based on that guidance alone. And then you start thinking about the kids that are actually in school. Like, what do the schools do? Because some parents are obviously not going to want their kids to get it yet. And I totally understand that, because it hasn't had full approval. It's still under emergency use authorization. So how does the school reconcile that? Because things tend to be more like, because you're not only dealing with regulatory things, you're dealing with behavioral regulations too. Because let's be honest, a bunch of school age kids in one concentrated place is, a controlled disaster. I think any teacher would probably any teacher would probably tell you that on some level, especially on a Thursday when there's still one more day to go in the week and they have only had one beer over dinner. But my sister's a teacher, and she would probably scowl, would be like, yeah, you're probably right a little bit. So anyway, yeah, that is an interesting thing to think about, how you reconcile all of that amongst younger school age kids, and then how you factor in the parents, the schools themselves, the administrators. That is going to be something that municipalities and counties have to come to a consensus on, and that's not going to be easy either.
Yeah, and
so leaders need to step up.
Yeah, well, but then like all of those like really interesting questions that we're talking about here that don't have clear-cut answers. I feel like so many of them could be solved if you just went with masks are highly recommended instead of mandated. It would fix so many of those problems. Because even the difference. Let's say, like, if there are people out there who weren't wearing masks, who like this decree comes out, like there's probably already people out there who weren't wearing masks anyways. What are they going to do? They're going to keep not wearing masks. You say, right, if you feel you should have a mask on because you're not vaccinated, then you should wear a mask. The people who are wearing masks are probably going to continue wearing masks. So like the amount of difference between this kind of a decree, there's going to be like a sliver of people who are on one side or the other that will actually continue to wear masks because of this versus not. But overall, because it's just such a weird thing to make a mandate like that, I think, because I don't know. It's still inexact. The efficacy has been debated 100 times. There was probably hearings in the House and the Senate on this stuff. The efficacy of it, and then you balance like individual liberties and people with health problems, and even at the beginning of the pandemic, availability of face masks was like, who wore a face mask before the pandemic started? Well, doctors, healthcare workers, that kind of thing. And then the only other time I've ever seen anyone wear a mask when they were sick, not in a medical setting, was when you would see someone of Asian descent in the airport and they were sick. And I think I heard someone say, I don't know if this is true or not, but they wore it because it was a way for them to
be respectful of someone else's space. Like, okay, I know that my bodily fluids are not going to be nice to you, so I will try to be, cognizant of that by putting this mask on.
Well, and that's their culture over there. I mean, that's just like baked in.
Yeah, it is.
And I think that that's probably a good thing, that if you're wearing them, if you still want to go to work and you're not feeling that well, but you're not feeling so bad that you don't want to go to work, put a mask on, just be like, yeah, I'm not feeling that great. It's not bad, but and just leave it at that. And so like that's one thing that I think that could, this whole mask thing over this last year could be good, that if we took that approach of, I'm feeling a little under the weather, but I still want to go to work, so I put a mask on, masks would be a lot more normal. But because everything has been so mandated and there's no choice in this, nobody would know what to do with that. With like, if the mask mandate completely disappeared, all the masks would disappear. But then you get those few people who are wearing it and everyone will just be like, what are you doing? The mask mandate is over. It's like, oh, well, I'm sick, so I decided to wear a mask. And it's like, oh, so what? You're trying to become a politician or something for, I mean, it's like, because they have not allowed any choice up to this point, when the choice, or when it becomes a choice, it'll still feel very politicized.
It will. And I wish it didn't have to be that way, because again, you would get somewhere a lot faster if it wasn't politicized like that. And I had a thought just now about that and it kind of escaped me, but again, if you keep saying the same thing, wear the mask, and then you do what the CDC said, and you're like, you don't have to wear it anymore if you're fully vaccinated, which I am. So I don't have to wear it anymore according to that guidance.
Woohoo!
Which is great. I mean, it's like getting in your car and going, oh no, I don't have a mask. And you walk into the gas station to get lunch or something, and they're like, oh, you don't have a mask, you're gonna leave. So you get rid of that annoyance. But then, you adopt the guidance and you turn it the other way now. And the psychology of how we've been doing things for 15 months has been so ingrained in us that it's going to take a long time to get away from that. And I was reading something today. Actually, it might have been, it was an article about what the CDC put out today. But basically saying, it's going to take us a while to get past this now. And my first thought was, well, what are you going to do, from your leadership position to make that happen? You have to somehow put guidance out there that encourages people to think again, instead of just saying, this is what CDC says, I should just do this. So you have to change the psychology through encouragement, through policy, which is hard to do. It's very, very hard to do. But that's what you've got to do. If you want to move forward, you have to encourage people to think again. It's got to be introspective, and it's got to be arguably bipartisan too.
Yeah. Well, and like, I mean, if you give people the choice too, there's a certain level of empowerment there when the government, instead of coming to you and saying, thou shalt do this, or you risk X, Y, and Z, of them coming to you and say, hey, you should do this because of these reasons. And then you being like, oh, you're not telling me exactly what I have to do. Like, you're giving me a choice. You trust me to make the right decision. Yeah. And it's like, most of the time people will make the right decision. Like, by and large, yes, there's going to be, less people probably than if you mandate it, but the overall sentiment of the government saying, we trust you, instead of, because you flip that on its head the other way, that they're saying, when they're saying a mandate, they're saying, we don't trust you.
Yeah.
And that wears on you.
That's so weird to me that, you could elect someone to public office. I mean, not everyone votes for the same person. If they did, that would be a terrible thing.
Yeah.
That's totally anti-American to even think about that, that thing happening. But, some people actually do need to be told what to do. I guess I would kind of put myself in that camp a little bit, because I just spent 12 years working for the government. And so they're like, hey, it's time for you to move to go, do this next job. And you're like, okay, I guess that means I have to pack up all my stuff and move, and, X, Y, and Z. It's an annoying, tedious process, but you know what the steps are. So there's some creativity in there, but some people need that structure just to be able to function when it comes to big things like this. And I get that it takes a lot of the stress out of it. But I think more and more now, you're seeing people on both sides of the aisle, and I've seen inklings of this on various places, but people are coming out of the woodwork now, and they're like, okay, we've been doing things this way. This is what we've been told. Why don't we do something completely different? And to that end, one guy I saw, his name's John Carlson. He's a rather prominent conservative in the Seattle area. It doesn't matter that he's conservative, but he has an idea that I think has merit. And he basically says, instead of doing phase 2, just end all the lockdowns, period. And I would argue that based on what the CDC said today, his point has merit. It may be time to just say, okay, if you don't want a vaccine, don't. You are taking your own risk. Yep. Everyone else who doesn't want to risk getting COVID and has a vaccine, they have mitigated risk in their own way. So, I feel like those two things jive in that they're forward thinking, forward looking, and they're looking to potentially explore new territory in getting around the pandemic a little bit. But they're giving people choice. I feel like that is that's huge. You can go to a restaurant or don't. It's not okay, I want to go to a restaurant, but I have to wait an hour because it's at 25% capacity. So instead of to use the expression, stoplighting everything, like the condition today is green, yellow, red, whatever the color is. Instead of stoplighting everything and making these phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, I think we even have like phase 2A and 2B. Like, what's the point of 2A and 2B? Like,
and it's broken down by like county. So it's like this county's in one, the other county's in another.
Yeah. So instead of stoplighting it, just get rid of it all completely and see where that goes. I feel like there's merit to that.
Well, and so like the risk there, which is one that I've never seen, thankfully, but heard a lot about is, you have to, like, if you just opened everything up, then your risk is essentially hospital beds filling up and you're not able to help people, which I feel like, that's a real thing. But I mean, I remember when COVID first hit over here, I mean, they had, I forget what, if it was the National Guard, who it was, like setting up like temporary hospitals, and they were set up for like weeks and they were never used. I had a neighbor that was in on that. The governor asked certain military agencies, I don't know the specifics on that part of it, but he asked the Army in this case to go set up a bunch of littoral hospital spots, beds in Lumen Field. And so they went in there and set up, this huge ward for COVID patients, and not one of the beds was used. I will give credit, though. I will attribute the fact we didn't have to use that to superior medical care being available in Washington State, and the governor actually taking pretty quick action on the initial parts of it. After that we'll just leave that alone. And that was in the time when things were unknown a lot more too.
And that's what I was just going to say. It was all when things are very unknown, and that outbreak in the nursing home was just, I mean,
that was brutal.
I was in New York City, just starting my new job, which I knew I was about to get probably cut or furloughed from because of the pandemic. But I'm watching the TV and I'm sitting in a hotel in New York, and they're talking about the nursing home outbreak in Washington State. And I'm like, okay, this is a big deal. And that's kind of when it really hit me, how things were and what was ahead. And what was ahead was just complete uncertainty. Mm-hmm. And looking back on it, I mean, that's exactly what I would think about it now if I went and saw it again. So you gotta react based on what you know. And if you don't know anything, that, like I said, that instills a little bit of fear, and then it stokes the what if scenarios. And there's people that are paid a lot of money to do the what if, the war games.
Which, I feel like I don't know, here I am saying that, things are really nuanced, but here I'm about to say this, but basically, like, if you get to a point where, like, basically, like you say, just end everything, end the stoplights, and just open everything back up. People make their own choices. But then if, the hospital beds, hit, I don't know what percent, 70, 80% capacity, you throw up the, hey, please be careful. And then it hits 90%. It's like, okay, we're in lockdown until we get these hospital beds more in line. Or that's when you activate that military response of temporary hospitals to get people taken care of. I mean, there's a couple of routes you could go there, but yeah, this whole, like, you can sit at the bar, but you can't sit in a booth. But now you can sit at the table, but you can sit at a bar if it's outside next to a fire and the sun is shining on your face. It's like all these different little, like, nuance, like, incredibly detailed different ways of doing it. Like, honestly, I have never really paid attention to anything except the restaurants being open or not. That's when we've been going through all these phases.
Yeah.
That's the
Can
only
I go to
thing.
Red Robin or not right now?
Exactly.
I need to go to Red Robin right now.
Exactly. I need to get the yum. So, yeah, it's been weird because we go through all these phases, and yet I didn't feel it. And I know that there's some people who did, specifically like restaurant owners, because they're either open or they're closed, and then they're having to figure out new ways to do business, which, thank goodness we have things like DoorDash and that, because I think that literally saved, I don't know how many businesses, but it has to be a very large percentage that would have just gone under if they didn't have some kind of structure already set up where your company instantly became a company that delivers.
And that is an interesting phenomenon. I think we're going to look back on this pandemic and we may learn something from that yet. If you look throughout history at every major conflict the United States has been a part of, what is one lesson learned we have? Superior logistical capability. World War II, a whole bunch of crap went across from England to Normandy, won the war. How did we stay in Vietnam so long? Resupply. You had a whole air bridge going across to resupply stuff. And there's smaller scale conflicts that reflect that as well. I will add a somewhat comical example of that, and that you're talking about DoorDash and Uber Eats and that kind of stuff. I want to know how many Honda Civics were responsible for the feeding of families during the pandemic, because that some kid was, he had his 2001 Honda Civic he had in college. He was like, I'm going to go put that puppy to work right now. And he like fed the neighborhood, 7 times over because of that little Honda Civic. So
that's an interesting thought. I think,
yeah, it is. I was thinking about that when, I think I got Uber Eats or something like that. And some kid pulls up in his little hatchback car. I was like, man, I know there's got to be at least a dozen more just like him running around right now, and they're probably killing it. I'm sure they made a ton of money doing it, and good for them. That is the work ethic that I feel like it used to be, maybe not as much anymore. But hey, I have an asset that I can use, put to work. I'm gonna go make some money, and they probably did really well.
Yeah, and all you need is you need a car, which that's not a small thing, but it's also not that uncommon. Yeah. And you need a phone with an app that says, I need you to go to Katana Sushi and pick up a poke bowl for Luke because Luke's hungry. And then Luke pays you a nice tip and it's totally delicious. And we both have a good day, So that's
good deal for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, and the fact that we have the internet right now, I mean, I know both of us were kind of slamming on the internet earlier, which I do think that humans as a whole don't know how to handle the internet in general, like as a whole, but
pretty overwhelming.
That was one piece that made this whole situation way better. I mean, trying to think about the world without the internet is a bizarre task anymore. But like trying to think about what this kind of a virus would have done if it had hit in, say, 1995 or something like that. I think technically the internet's around. I get it, but it's not as prolific as it is now. It probably would have been a much different story.
Yeah.
Like
you're right.
The COVID thing would have been much different. And I don't know if that's better or worse. Like there's a part of me that's really cynical that thinks that maybe it would have been, I don't know. I think it's probably better that we had the internet, but there's a piece of me that's like, well, would it? I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's an interesting thing to think about. The world would be much different in general, but with response to the, specific response to this pandemic, yeah, I don't even know what that would have looked like.
And there's a couple different ways that I'm thinking about that too. Cause I mean, like, I guess I'm thinking about it in like the level of paranoia that everybody would have. I don't know. Would you be more or less scared of, cause you'd be sitting in front of your TV, listening to Tom Brokaw talk about it, and everybody get the same message, and then you'd go to sleep, as opposed to everyone, grabbing their phone and being like, okay, well, Fauci just said this, so let's go see what Aussie Man has to say about that.
Man, he's got to do a review. Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
And he's got he's been doing that for so long that like as soon as I open YouTube, it's always one of the first things that pops up is Aussie Man reviews, and I usually watch it. So
yep, he's got you. Gotta love him. Hilarious.
Oh man. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be weird I mean, everybody wants to get back to normal, but it's like this whole thing has been so weird, and it went on for so long that getting back to a normal, I feel like is going to be really hard, because I mean, just the impact it had to like small businesses and how bolstered large businesses became. I mean, Amazon had to have just destroyed. I wasn't watching this, but I'd be shocked if they weren't just destroying it right now.
If I could have taken my life savings and put it on Amazon one day before we found out about the outbreak, I could probably retire.
Yeah. No, what you need to do is put it on Dogecoin, man.
I was just gonna say, where's the Dogecoin reference? The pandemic has literally like made us go crazy, where we're putting money on a fictitious currency that's based on, what is it, an Akita? I don't even know what that is. But
I think of it as a big fluffy corgi, but I'm sure that any corgi owner would slap me. So
well, tomorrow I'm gonna write some code and we're gonna create Corgi coin. How about that?
There we go, a corgi coin. I'll put a few dollars down. But apparently that's not how that works, right? Because it's cryptocurrency. I have to not put dollars down. You can't put dollars on it until it goes public on the stock market or something like that. Isn't that how that works?
Yeah, there I don't know how it happens before it hits some kind of exchange, but yeah, you're right. It has to be on an exchange for there to be for there to be, coin of whatever variety purchased. So an interesting idea. That is also another interesting idea that I don't know near enough about, that I would kind of like to explore.
Yeah.
Because if you haven't noticed, Bitcoin has made a lot of people very, very rich.
Oh my goodness. It's
just not me or you.
Yeah.
Apparently.
It's like hindsight here is incredible. Yeah. It's like, it's a joke. Well, Bitcoin, I wouldn't say is as much of a joke coin as like Dogecoin was, but yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really hopeful with this mask thing. I mean, like, I think we both agree it could have been rolled out much better, but at the end of the day, if I can go to work and not have to wear my mask, I'm excited about that, because like sitting at my desk, the mask on all day, and then like, after lunch, I forget to put my mask back on for like 5 minutes, and that one person walks by and like gives you that like sideways look. It's like, what? It's like, oh, right. And you put, it's like, I can't wait for that
There's
to be
that,
done.
like, you get the dirty looks, but I also feel like it's made people more self-aware, where they down 3 cups of coffee and then they put their mask back on, and they get to experience their own coffee breath, and they're like, oh
Oh my
yeah,
gosh. I don't know how many
where's the
times
Tic Tacs?
I don't know how many times I have walked into work and like I'm walking in and like, there's some nice cool morning air and I walk through the gate and it's just, throw the mask up and it's just oh, like, oh my goodness,
Yep.
I should have at least taken a few drinks of water to clear all that crud out or something. Cause like I kept walking, like, cause I didn't go back to work for quite a while, but like the first couple times I did, there's like there's a pathway over a road, so it's this little tunnel, little bridge to go to work, and every time I walk through there, it was there is something bad here, there's something like something is horrible here. And then one morning I had like some coffee or some water or something and it didn't stink. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been smelling my own breath this whole time.
It's amazing how much gum I accumulated in my car because of that problem after I became self-aware, as it
so
were.
so what I was thinking
I was
about
like, I
doing
need some gum apparently.
Yeah, what I was thinking about doing was because we occasionally do a campfire or it's not a campfire because you're not camping. What do you call it? A fire? Do a fire pit? I don't know. Have a fire in the backyard,
Yeah,
whatever. I've thought about
yeah,
like
sure.
getting like some clothesline and stringing out some masks and letting the masks soak up that smoke because I mean I don't know about you, but I love the smell of campfire smoke and just putting
Absolutely.
and
Love it.
it would really stick to those masks. It's like I could be smelling wood smoke all day.
And it would get the fleas and ticks off your mask too, right?
Yeah, exactly, because I have so many of those.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I don't think it's the best rollout, but I'm looking forward to it. And I mean, how does that work for, like, did you end up getting furloughed? And or are
No.
you are you flying right now, like off and on?
No. So I started working for the airline January of last year, right before the pandemic
Yeah,
started.
and it was like,
And
great, good
then,
timing.
yeah, which I mean, honestly, it actually is good timing because they're probably about to start hiring a bunch of people again. But I was lucky enough to get onboarded, and then I started my training, and then the pandemic hit kind of when I was just about to, they kicked me loose from the training pipeline and I go start flying. Um, it took a long time for events to precipitate, but around July, August timeframe, all of the major airlines were like, hey, we're probably going to have to furlough like, 2,000 people. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's really bad. So I can't remember when the first payroll support program passed out of Congress, but that basically saved us from getting furloughed until November. So we survived the summer. They kept us on payroll. We weren't flying. We weren't working. Pretty much nobody was working. Like there was almost no demand for airline passenger seats anywhere.
Yeah,
Normally the airlines do
I saw
about
that. They would show us
the
those charts at Boeing, and it's like, this looks bad. This is really bad. So
yeah,
I saw those same charts.
yeah. So I mean, you saw what happened. I mean, you do normally like 2 million passengers a day or so at like 2019 travel levels, and then we were down to like 80,000 people in a day. I remember going through Detroit airport and it was a ghost town. And I had been through Detroit when it was, normal, and just knowing what the two look like, it was a very stark, very humbling experience to know that the world had literally ground to a halt because of this. But anyway, so November comes around and PSP2 gets passed, and then that basically bridges us to now, where we're through the part of the pandemic where we didn't have vaccines, but now we do. People are getting vaccinated. The numbers are dropping. At least in the United States, where we have mass vaccines available, there's not hospitalizations. There's not 3,000 cases a day per a tri-county area in X metropolitan city. So people are traveling again. There's like 1.5 million average for a while now, which is a big deal from what we were and what we've come to now. So I never, long story short, I never got furloughed, and I'm very fortunate for that. There's a lot of people that went to bat in Congress with the union that represents me and the rest of the people that I work with. And my family was able to basically enjoy the same quality of life, maybe not quite as good, but we had everything we needed and more because of them. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that I'm grateful for that, because that meant a lot to a lot of people, like tens of thousands of airline workers. The maintainers, the cargo guys loading the bags in the bottom that weren't loading bags at all, the flight attendants, the pilots up front, the tech ops people, they all got some kind of help. And that kept them afloat to get to now where things are actually looking up. And psychologically, not just in the physical sense, like I have a house and a roof over my head kind of thing and food on the table. I have a job I can go back to that is good, that is for a good company. And that means a lot. So very fortunate in that regard.
Yeah. And I mean, like with things starting to open up, I mean, people are I keep waiting for like that moment where kind of the floodgates open up, and like your industry in particular, if you're not staffed for that, it would be mad. I mean, I'm sure it's already going to be crazy when things really, really get back to normal. Well, we already talked about this, but get back to about as close to normal as you're going to get. And everyone's just going to have this really intense cabin fever, and your industry is really going to see that.
I absolutely. I laughed there because it's already happening.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Oh yes. Without getting into too many,
because that's good for me too.
Yeah, it is, and the Max is coming back. The FAA approved the electrical fix, so that's good for Southwest. It's good for international carriers, European carriers. Ryanair in particular has a whole bunch of 737 Maxes that are on the lemon lot at Moses Lake over there, as we call it. So that's good. But the staffing thing is an entirely different animal, because at airlines like mine that have multiple fleets, Airbus and Boeing, you have to spread out, everyone to the right markets and to the right places. Oh, and by the way, you have to have them trained and current and qualified. And because of how the pandemic went down, a bunch of guys retired early, about 1,800, which is a lot. I mean, that was almost 20% of the seniority list. So you have that amount of departures, and now demand is coming back faster than they had forecasted. And you got a staffing problem. You got a big staffing problem to the point where you had cancellations on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and again on Easter. So in a basically 4-month time frame, you still hadn't got your staffing caught up, which it takes a long time to get staffing caught up at an airline. I'm learning a lot about that. I'm at like 95%. So I'm like, basically scraping the bottom of the barrel for where I'm at. I'm the junior guy on the totem pole, but I'm still learning a lot about how all that works. It takes a long time to change, qualifications and training, and it just takes a lot of time and resources. So I think they have it fixed by and large. This summer could be interesting. Next summer will be better for sure. But you hit the nail on the head. Staffing is the big issue right now. People want to travel. Hawaii is about to go bananas, I'm pretty sure, this summer. People are going to places like Sedona just to get out of Dodge. I mean, shoot, you could probably go to Ames, Iowa and have a good time right now. I don't know. It just people want to get out and see and do things, and you're definitely seeing that in the passenger counts. 1.5 million a day is a lot.
So, like, if you were understaffed, I'm assuming that, like, even for baggage handlers or some of the, being a pilot, that takes a long time to get there from a training perspective. Being a baggage handler, I'm sure that there's some training, but it's a lot less. But the fact I'm assuming that there's some kind of security background checks that have to be done that are more
Yeah,
significant than you normally would. And if you're behind on your staffing, that's a big hurdle to get over that in order to get people in to be able to fill the
that's
gaps.
huge. No, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a one team with 18 different specialties. You got dispatchers that are in charge of all the um, you know out of the gate, into the gate, everything that happens in between that space. Like they're in charge of that information, getting the flight safely executed every time an airplane leaves the ground. Um, the flight attendants, the baggage handlers, the gate agents, the customer service agents that answer the phones. Yeah, you're right. Some of them may have gone to other jobs, like anything logistics related, truck drivers, um, food delivery, whatever. They may have gone and done something else, and so now depending on how they're regulated, like if you're working on the ramp, you have to be credentialed, you have to have access to a secure area, and that's a big deal. So what if their ID expired, or what if they do need recurrent training or something like that? I don't know the specifics on those things. What I do know is that if it's regulated, it takes time to get those things back up and running again. When you just shut something off like that, that's a huge deal. That's money and time for the company, and it's also money and time for the employee. And so they go and find different jobs, and then you're like, hey, I need you to come back tomorrow. Well, sorry, man. I'm working a job in Morocco as a
Yeah.
contractor now, or and it's difficult. And the other part of it is, I think, to some degree, people don't want to go back to work yet because they kind of got used to the way things were. They were getting stimulus payments, and that's not a commentary. That is not a commentary on the welfare state so much. There is some of that, but it's just people got comfortable again. And now going back to something that was comfortable at one time is not anymore. So you have to change again, changing the psychology. That's kind of a theme with this pandemic. You got to get people to go back to do those things again, and that's definitely hard.
Yeah, and it's difficult because for a large chunk of time there, you were wanting to get food on the table, make sure people weren't getting foreclosed on because
Yeah.
they lost their job, because the restaurant closed, because the government said so. So the government, tries to help with that. Now we're wanting people to go back to work. And so it's this delicate balance of, you need to kind of wean people off of that. And the hard part is it has been so long that it's gotten to the point where it feels normal. And
Yeah.
it's a lot. I mean, getting people to go back to work, people like doing something that's fulfilling. So there's a piece of that just from a human psychology standpoint, people like doing that. But the finances are a big piece of it, and it's going to be tricky. I mean, I think that it's headed in the right direction. I don't know, like I remember when I was looking at, and I only very briefly looked into it because I didn't know what was going to happen at Boeing. Because like I said, we saw the same numbers you did of like the
Yeah.
bottom just fell out on the airline industry. And Boeing basically follows the airline industry. And so if the bottom falls out there, I mean, I'm very fortunate that I'm still employed. I was doing, I'm very thankful. I'll just leave it at that. And
I
it
thought
was one of
about
those
I thought
things.
about you a lot too about this throughout this whole thing. So yeah, I'm glad you're still there too. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's when you look at the unemployment, you're like, oh man, I have to do this. But then you see that actually the amount of unemployment you're going to get if you get let go, it's like that's actually, you can live off of that, especially with all these bonus payments. Like, um, I don't know. I would never want to be laid off, but I don't know. It was a weird situation. I think it still is, but similar to like the bringing people in who know what they're doing, specifically like at Boeing, when you have engineers who know this one piece of the airplane really well, you let them go, And now all of a sudden we're wanting to start bringing, we are starting to bring people back. There are a lot more job wrecks at Boeing right now, but it's sometimes it's hard to get those people to want to come back because now they found a different machine shop that they're working in. They really like that. And now we just let that much experience walk out the door, and you have to train the new person. And it's not an impossible task, but it slows the progress down of getting Boeing back to where it wants to be.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I feel like that's scalable all the way down to that restaurant now. I mean, you have one guy that was kind of like a median or high end restaurant that had a really, really good chef. And all of a sudden that chef's like, peace out, man. I got to go do something else.
Yeah.
Because I'm not making any money here anymore. And that at the corporate level, probably more so. Now you gotta bring that talent back, and that involves HR on the front end to onboard them. Then you have training, technical aspects, tech ops, and then you re-involve HR again for the benefits stuff. It's all of these different moving pieces, of which there's sub parts to all of those.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of time and a lot of resources, and it just generates this inertia that is in some cases insurmountable. And so the organization just changes it, like adapt or die, and that's what they do. They just adapt. And at the detriment of that employee that left, that probably would be better suited being back there, but is no longer able to or doesn't want to, because that's just the way the world drove them. So you will see some manifestations of businesses changing. I'm sure Boeing is definitely one of them. Changing maybe for the better, but also changing just because they had to. And so there's going to be growing pains for a long time that, the old guys are like, well, we used to do it this way. And then, the new guys like, well, that's dumb. Why would we do that? And you have this back and forth, and, there's always change. Change is something that people don't like. They don't like change. They want things to be predictable. And I'm not talking in general. Well, I am talking in general. I'm not talking.
I am hardcore that way. I love routine. My goodness.
Yes, I am the same way. If I woke up at 7:00, I got my coffee and I went to work every day, and I did that 5 days a week. Fantastic. I've kind of done that for a while now, but it's good. I mean, your body gets used to it. Like your chemistry is used to it. Your circadian rhythm is dialed in. When your kids are actually going to school, that's a whole nother topic, but you add that in, and then like you have fulfillment through this time controlled structure. And we have not had that for a very, very long time. So, we talk about going back to normal. That part of normal for a lot of people is something that they'll be like, oh yeah, this is good. They may not say that or realize that at that level, but on the subliminal, like, I got to go to work and do this and this and this and this, like, they're going to enjoy that. Yeah. I know I will, whenever that day comes.
Yeah. And like, man, like talking about like how your body gets used to it, so right when it kind of hit and I went back to, or was at home most of the time, my back just like, it was dumb. Like it was right when we went on that camping trip. That's kind of right when it started. But
oh yeah,
I still like, I went on a couple runs in like November and December and paid for it bad. Like I was barely walking most of December. It was disgusting. But I think a lot of that was tied to the fact that, I don't know, I think some of it was tied to the fact that I was being dumb because I used to hurt my back and like take a week off. But that September, I hurt my back and I was like, I'll be fine. It's just my back. I'll just keep running. I'm not doing any heavy lifting. Very bad choice.
Yeah.
And I'm finally kind of getting back to it. But I mean, that was one thing that I really do like about being back on site and that I missed being at home. I mean, I love being, getting that hour of commute back, and being able to sleep in an extra hour. That's amazing. But the way, when you have meeting to meeting to meeting, and you don't even just stand up. Like if you're going meeting to meeting to meeting on site, you're at least standing up and going up a flight of stairs, walking down a hall. And that's
Functional
something
fitness.
you miss.
Yeah,
Yes.
man.
It's amazing how, if you're not just, like the restrooms at Boeing, they're, 3 or 4 flights down. So you got to do all those many stairs anytime you need to take a piss. And it's like, here at home, it's like, it's 12 steps away. It's like, it's convenient.
You can crawl to the bathroom if you wanted to. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's,
no, I hear you. And I was gonna say, to that end, I experienced kind of the same thing. Like, I have back issues, and they're probably getting worse. But today and yesterday, I was out, painting the fence, and painting the fence is actually a fairly physical thing, as it turns out, because you're, up on the ladder. If it's a 6 foot, I think it's actually probably an 8 foot fence, but you're up and down and stuff. And I got home yesterday. I was like, holy smokes, my legs are gone. Like, I was actually like squatting a fair amount and getting around.
Well, yeah, you got to go all the way down to the ground, and then all the way up to the top, and you're going back and forth the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I figured it out. Like, what if I just stayed down on the ground and did the bottom part first, and then like went to the top? Process engineering. We got better as we went. Lessons learned. Yep.
But see, then your quality goes down a little, because then you'll see that line in the fence. You have to I hope you feathered it in, because otherwise you're going to see this weird, like dry lines. I used to paint. I did think about
that. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I was like, it's a cedar fence, and I hate this fence anyway. So just paint it and be done. That's kind of how I thought about it. But,
oh man, I had to do some painting recently. We had a pipe, one of our shower, or the master bath shower drain, had a bad leak in it. So we had this big old thing in our ceiling, and had to get the plumbing done, cut this big, like 2 by 2 foot section of ceiling out right in the living room. And it was like, oh man. But it was fun. Oh, it took me back. I'd never done any drywall work, or not spackling. What do you call it when you smooth it all out? What's that called? Mudding?
Mudding and perforating. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd never done that. So that was an interesting experience. It went relatively well. I don't think you can see it, but I'm a little biased. But it was fun. It was fun going back to the painting.
Yeah. I kind of like that stuff. My dad is a huge home improvement guy, and I learned a little bit from him, just kind of watching him and doing some of it with him. But, you do something like that, and you're like, I know there's a ridge there. You just look up at the ceiling every time you see it, and you're like, I know there's a ridge there. But you're the only one who will ever notice it. Yeah. And it's like a psychological thing. It's not even a physical defect in the ceiling. It's just that that it's there, and you think about it. So, you see what you're thinking, and everyone else will be like, yeah, it looks great.
Yeah. See, and so I can't see the ridge lines, because I don't really know what to look for, but I can totally see exactly where the paint line, like I tried to feather it out nice, but it's like, I still see it. It's like right there. Joanna, thankfully, she can't see it. So it's like, okay, well, as long as wifey's happy, that's good.
Yep. If they can't see it, then all is well. Move on to the next thing.
Yeah. We're gonna, man, we got, I told you this a bit ago back, but man, we got like some major like house stuff coming up, and I'm not excited about it, because it's all well outside of my, like, yeah, I'll just like go to Home Depot, buy some new tools, spend a little money, and have a fun project.
You said it was like your foundation that's got some issues?
Yeah, we're gonna have to refinance our house. We've got a couple cracks in the foundation, and the pillars in the middle of the house are sinking. So it's dumb. It's dumb. I'm not looking forward to that. And so we're gonna get money to do that, and we're gonna do our roof at the same time, just because, once we take care of that, those are like the main big things that were like big ticket items for our house. And so once we take care of that, we have some windows that we need to replace, but that's phone a friend and go get I've never
Yeah.
done it, but it's not something
It's not
insurmountable
bad.
by any means. So,
No, Windows are definitely something you can do. Foundation stuff is, I mean, you need like engineering knowledge, like material engineering knowledge, that is, you got to know the layers of the ground, and you got to know, you got to put more material here to mitigate this crack and like lift up the foundation on the other side.
yeah,
That's a lot of time and a lot of money, unfortunately. But the silver lining here is that interest rates are rock bottom
yep,
right now.
yeah.
So
The only piece that,
still like a good rate.
yeah, the piece that I'm frustrated about is, so we had a 30-year, and we're about 5 years in, and it's like the first 5 years, all you're paying is interest, and we're looking at, where our finances are at and what, and it's like, I think we need to do another 30-year, and it's like, oh, we just gave, this bank 5 years of interest, and we're just going to hit the reset button. Oh my gosh, it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. But I mean, it's either that or your house collapses into the gates of hell. So,
The chasm hath open and your house just falls into it. Yeah.
yes. So it's interesting, but like it's the thing that we really noticed was the significant amount of, or at least that I noticed. The only other person who's noticed the increase in creaking throughout the house, which is what kind of tipped me off that we had a lot more than usual. The only other person who's noticed is Natalie, our little 2-year-old.
What was that noise?
She's in her room, like right before this, I went in there and she'd been talking. I was like, baby girl, it's time to sleep. You need to pipe down and head on pillow, close your eyes, get some sleep. And she's like pointing to the sink. It noisy there and it noisy over here and it making noise. And I'm like, there's a part of me that's like, I am so proud of you. Because that amount of knowledge, like, and paying attention from her is like that's the kind of, it was fun. But then there's also the part of me that's like, you need to be quiet and go to
bed. Valid. She will probably also be the next like maestro of the, Philadelphia orchestra or something like that. Yeah. With, I can hear it over here. I can hear it over here.
Yeah. She keeps us on our toes. She's a lot of fun. But after we get those like big things done, like last summer, we had some leaky windows on the east side of our house, and I'd been battling it for a long time. And finally I was, you know what, I'm done. So I just went and got a bunch of caulking, caulked up every crack I could find. The back of the house looked so bad. And I was like, you know what, I'm just painting the back side of the house. I'm painting one side of the house. So my plan now is to, over the next like 4 summers, just pick another side of the house, just paint that side of the house, get everything, sealed up and painted, and just do it that way. And then, every, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, pick a new side of the house to do in the summer, and just do one side of the house. And, I can't tell the difference between the back side of our house and the north side of our house right now, because, it's the same color.
You could knock 2 birds out with one stone here if you just went and got a whole bunch of that flex steel stuff. You know what I'm talking about?
I almost got that. We had these weird trellis things above one of our windows, and eventually I just ripped it all off, and it was good that I did, because that wood was rotten. The paint was starting to peel, so basically the water's going right into the rotten wood, right into the wall, right under the window, and down into the house. And it was like, I kept just trying to like caulk the top of it. And I mean, I was using a lot of caulk, but so there was a part of me that's like, if I just get the Flex Seal and just spray it on, then I'll be fine. And it was like, I don't know. So I went and ripped that all off and repainted everything. And, it's a 2-story house. So, there was a couple days where I was a good, 30 feet up, and the boys are like, whoa, what are you doing up there? And it's like, yeah, Dad's being dad today. It's like,
I'm about to go into That's what I'm about to do when I fall off this roof.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I mean, and fortunately, for me, I did do a lot of painting in high school. So moving big ladders around was something I was at least familiar with. So I didn't, put the end of the ladder right through the master bedroom window or something.
Yeah.
That would end poorly. That would end really poorly.
Yeah.
So
I need 2 new windows. Yeah.
So what were you doing to your fence? Were you staining or painting?
So it's a house that we're renting out, but
That's right.
Lovely.
That's why I don't recognize this particular door frame in the background, because I was thinking like, did you? But I mean, like where you're at is amazing. I mean, those pictures that Kate takes of Rainier all the time, like,
yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah. We're very fortunate. Kate has a friend that has this property that's right down on Puget Sound, kind of close to Olympia. And we wake up in the morning, and if it's not raining and foggy or cloudy, which is half the year, but if it's not, we can see Mount Rainier, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's beautiful here. But that we live in this house now. We're renting out the other one where I was painting the fence. And our lovely HOA said, hey, you all need to paint your fence this dark brown color. And right now we have, most of the people have not painted it. So you can see like the natural color of the cedar plank fence we all have. Mm-hmm. I like it. Like when cedar gets older, it grays out a little bit. It ages well. It has some character. They're like, no, we want you to paint it brown, and you have to do it by July 1st. So I said, okay, we got a decent week of weather here. Let's just get it done.
Yeah.
And that wood is so dry, and it's rough cut. It's all got all kinds of texture on it. It just soaks up that stain like it's, water in the Sahara. So it took me most of yesterday afternoon and last night, and then more today, to get all of our fence stained. And then our neighbor, I helped them out and did theirs too, but man, that was tedious. So I will say, lesson learned, home improvement lesson number 1625, never ever have a cedar plank fence.
Did you power wash it before you stained it?
I did, and I'll tell you, I did one section where I didn't power wash it. It didn't make any difference at all.
Oh,
the stain is so dark. And it's like it's somewhere in between a stain and a paint. You just paint it on there, and it just totally changes the color, and it covers up any imperfection, dirt, dust, mold, otherwise that's on there. So power washing it was probably kind of a waste of water, but.
Oh, see, I love power washing. Like every spring, like I enjoy going out and doing our driveway and sidewalks, and like to the point where I go to our neighbors, and if they don't do it, I'm like, hey, if you want me to power wash like everything for you, like I'm totally willing. Because I don't know, there's just some like OCD in me that's just like because I have the spinning circle attachment to increase the size and make it a little more even when you're doing that. And man, I don't know. I probably enjoy it more than I should, but
I know what you're talking about. If you're doing like a concrete prepared surface, like you just watch all that green muck just disappear. Like, you have like the Billy Mays commercial, like before, after.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's very satisfying. I did that to our patio too, and I get it. You like just do it like one square at a time, and it's very symmetric, and just a way for your brain to check out for a while. It's like doing Sudoku.
Yeah, the piece. There's a piece of me that almost wants to leave it, like only do it every other year, so that the effect, like, so that when that effect hits, and you get the chemicals in the brain, so it's even better. But I can't.
I'm really getting it this year.
Yeah. Well, because I remember the first year I did it, because we lived here about 3 years and had never done it, and the first year that I went out there and cleaned it, it was pretty intense, the amount of difference, and so it's like I kind of miss that. So.
Yeah. After you live here and having grown up in the, the mountains of Montana, it's dry there and it's not dry here. So yeah, you definitely have an appreciation for what it means to be in a maritime climate where you have to deal with moss and mold and all that junk that coagulates on your cement surfaces outside and the side of your house too.
Yeah. Yeah. The north side of our house has stayed pretty clean, and I'm thankful for that, because yeah, I don't really want to. I don't know how you like get out there with a sponge and just slowly wipe the side of your house down. That sounds like a really mind-numbing experience.
Yeah, it sounds like I'm going to pay someone to go and do it at that point.
All right, man. Well, we're at time here, so thanks for joining. It was really great talking to you.
Yeah, super cool, man. It was a first for me, so I enjoyed it as well. Solving the world's problems and talking with a good friend. What could be better?
Yeah. Do you do anything on social media other than the occasional Facebook?
No, I pretty much just do Facebook passively, and that's kind of all I do.
Okay.
At the moment.
Same here. I have a few social media accounts set up for this, but yeah, most people I'm talking to don't have much of a social media presence, which makes the podcast. You talk about what kind of social media presence do you have? None. It's like, yeah, pretty much me too. So
yeah.
But anyways, sure. It's good talking to you.
Yeah, likewise, man. Take care. Adhocracy.